a man whose life became an epitome of evil, a shadow trudging his way through a trail of deceit and blood. In the abyss where human depravity lurks, there are those whose names become synonymous with the darkness. One such name is David Henry Gaskins, the Hitchhiker Killer, born on March 13, 1933. In the rural community of Florence County, South Carolina, Gaskins was the product of a broken home, marred by poverty and neglect. His mother, already with a slew of children from different men, paid little attention to the boy they nicknamed Pee-wee. Due to his small stature, abuse and mockery were daily realities for young Donald. By the age of 11, his days were spent in the company of a roving band of miscreants, engaging in petty theft and simple barnyard burglaries. But the seeds of violence germinated early. By 13, he assaulted a young girl in his neighborhood. This act cast him into the brutal hands of a reform school, where the seeds would grow into something darker, more sinister. In a world devoid of love, filled with the cruelty of boys and men alike, Gaskins was subjected to repeated abuses, each one chipping away at whatever humanity might have been salvageable. He escaped, only to be caught and returned to endure more. The boy that emerged from reform school was not the same boy who entered. Embittered, vengeful, and utterly devoid of empathy. The year was 1955 when he claimed his first life. A hitchhiker, to trusting for the world she met that day. Gaskins found a twisted pleasure in the power of life and death. He prowled the highways, picking up those whose fate would be sealed with a ride. Men, women, children. It mattered not to Gaskins. His appetite for violence knew no bounds. As the body count rose, so did the whispers of the Hitchhiker Killer. Yet law enforcement was always one step behind. The specter of Gaskins, ever elusive. It wasn't until 1975 that Gaskins' reign of terror would come to an end. Arrested on unrelated charges, the floodgates of confession swung open. He spoke of his murders as one might recount a day's work, each detail more harrowing than the last. Gaskins' modus operandi was as methodical as it was monstrous, luring his victims with promises of help and good deeds, only to lead them to their untimely demise in secluded locations, far from prying eyes. The details of his crimes were as gruesome as they were calculated. He would strangle, stab, or bludgeon his victims, reveling in their fear and helplessness as their lives slipped away into the void. Gaskins recounted the details of his dark deeds to the officers.
They trusted me, you know. They thought I was just a friendly guy offering a ride, but I had other plans for them. I enjoyed seeing the fear in their eyes, the realization dawning on them that they were at my mercy.
Gaskins' recounting of his crimes sent shivers down the spines of even the most seasoned investigators. His words painted a portrait of a man devoid of empathy, a predator who saw his victims as nothing more than pawns in his twisted game of death. Sentenced to death, Gaskins was confined to the narrow cell of death row, but not even prison walls could contain his murderous desires. In 1982, he committed one final act of violence, a contract killing of a fellow inmate, using explosives he'd somehow smuggled into the penitentiary. An act so brazen, so coldly calculated, it cemented Gaskins' legacy as one of the most ruthless killers ever confined within prison walls. As the final chapter of his life approached, Gaskins offered no remorse, no solace to the families of his victims. He existed in a world where empathy was a foreign concept. On the morning of September 6, 1991, the state exacted its justice. The execution was clinical, devoid of the cruelty that Gaskins had doled out to so many. With his passing, the shadow that had loomed over the Carolinas for so long began to dissipate, but not without leaving its indelible mark on the psyche of a region, a country, and the annals of criminal infamy. Today, the highways where David Henry Gaskins once hunted are traveled by the unsuspecting, the young and innocent, helpful strangers, and monsters alike. His story serves as a sinister reminder of the darkness that can reside within the human heart, the potential for evil that can hitch a ride within any soul. And so, the legacy of the Hitchhiker Killer endures, not as a specter of fear, but as a cautionary tale. A tale of a man who became a monster, and the indelible shadow he cast across the lives he touched.